Hi, guys. Welcome to Undressing the podcast with me, Julia. I'm a Los Angeles based therapist and I specialize in working with all things related to sex and relationships. So, in today's episode, I kind of want to talk about my story. I want to talk about me. Shocker. So, I get asked quite a bit by my clients what brought me into the type of work that I do. And specifically, what they're referring to is working with sex addiction and betrayal trauma or partner trauma, meaning partners of sex addicts. So I figure in order to answer that question, I kind of need to tell my story. So here goes. So when I was 23 years old, I met a guy who ended up being my husband. I ended up marrying him. And when I initially met him, he swept me off my feet. He was so charming, so thoughtful, so romantic, such a sweetheart, great sense of humor. He was awesome. I felt like I met the man of my dreams. And we got married. I was 25 years old and we got married. So as the marriage progressed, all sorts of problems surfaced that were painful, that basically ended up destroying our marriage. But I had no idea at the time that these problems were all huge red flags of the fact that he was a sex addict. He had a sex addiction. So I work with sex addicts right now. And am I resentful? Do I hold anger towards them? Is it hard for me not to judge them given that I've been hurt by a sex addict? The answer to that is no. No, I don't. Because I understand that addiction, any and all addiction, whether it's to sex, to drugs, to whatever, is a state of suffering. People who have addictions are not happy. They are not in a good place. Addiction is a coping mechanism, and they're coping with something really, really hard. It took me a long time to get to that point, but I'll talk a little bit about that. But anyway, throughout our marriage, he was my best friend. We had a great rapport. We had a great banter. We were always able to laugh and hang out and find things in common and things to do. He showered me with gifts. He was awesome in that regard. However, less than a year into the marriage, the sex dropped off almost completely. I'm talking like once every 4 to 6 months. And even then, it wasn't this like passionate, loving thing because it was so seldom. It was kind of awkward. And then things started happening. I would find him in the guest bedroom watching pornography and masturbating when I was asleep in the other room. I would try to initiate sex and I would get rejected by him all the time. There were always excuses. I ate too much at dinner. I feel too full. I'm tired. I have a headache. I had a long day. I think I pulled a muscle at my gym. I just don't think I could do it. Whatever the excuse was, it was just me feeling rejected and not desired pretty much on a regular basis. So I tried talking about it. I even tried to do the old, look at my new lingerie that I'm gonna model for you and walk around in front of the TV while you're watching TV, only to be ignored, which was so painful. And I just started feeling like we were roommates and other stuff started happening. He started traveling a lot for work, and one day I got a phone call from him saying, listen, he was kind of frantic. And he's like, I'm staying at this hotel for work. And I just want you to know, I need to know that you believe me when I tell you what happened. I need to know that you're on my side. And I was like, what happened? Like, calm down. This sounds kind of crazy already. And I don't even know what happened. So he says, well, the cleaning lady, the maid at the hotel, accused me of trying to basically pay her to do something sexual with me. And she's trying to claim that I sexually harassed her and I did no such thing. I think she just sees that I have expensive suits on and she's just trying to extort me, and it's all bullshit. You know, I would never do anything like that. And I was like, well, why would she just make that up? And he goes, no, I didn't do anything. I swear to God, she's just, you know, trying to get money out of me and it's all bullshit. And I just need to know that you're on my side. Okay. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Another trip home, he comes back, and from one of these work trips, he had a project out in Ohio. We were living in New Jersey at the time. And he comes back, and he always used to travel with garment bags. And it's because he used to wear suits all the time. And this garment bag that he traveled with was actually given to him by his dad. And he comes back, and what I usually did when he came back from trips was I would go through his garment bag and take his suits out and bring them to the dry cleaners. So he brings back his garment bag and his suits, and the next day I go to take the suits out to bring them to the dry cleaners. And out of the bag falls out a box of condoms. You know, those little 3-packs that you can get at any old gas station or 7-Eleven. And it was open, and there were only 2 in there. Well, at this point, we'd been married for a few years. We weren't using condoms. So immediately, my mind goes to worst case scenario. So I confront him, and I ask him, what's this? Why do you have condoms in your bag? And why is there one missing? And what he did is called gaslighting, but he completely turned it around on me, and he got so defensive and so indignant. And basically what he said was, you know, it's not mine. And you know that my dad gave me that bag. I think it's his. Your parents have been married for 40 years at this point. I doubt they're using condoms, but okay. But then he kind of laid into me, and he's like, you know, it really sucks that you don't give me the benefit of the doubt, that you assume the worst when I've given you no reason not to trust me. And, you know, it's your father who you don't trust. He knew about the history with my dad and my father's infidelity. So he's like, you know, you're taking your old family shit out on me, and I don't appreciate that. And it sucks that my own wife would treat me that way. And I still wasn't buying it. And I was like, well, yeah, okay, but you also haven't had sex with me, your wife, in God knows how long. So for me to find this, it's highly suspicious. And I don't know, I just don't believe you. My gut is telling me that you're lying. And of course, the answer I get is, well, I don't give a shit about what your gut says. I didn't do anything wrong, and you're just paranoid. You need to go to therapy to work out your stuff around your dad's infidelity. I'm not going to tolerate you taking it out on me, so on and so forth. In hindsight, I completely see that this was gaslighting, but I didn't know it at the time. And here's another piece of self-disclosure for you. Here goes. So about 3 years into our marriage, both of us started having all sorts of pain in our genital areas. Yes, I said genitals. And we didn't know what it was. So we both went to our respective doctors, and we found out that both of us were having an initial outbreak of herpes at the same time. So we find this out. His urologist tells him that. My gynecologist tells me this. We come back together. We come home, and he looks at me dead serious and just says, so are you cheating? No, I'm not. Are you cheating? How dare you ask me? Well, you just asked me. So what the fuck, dude? Like, it works both ways. So I ended up going back to my gynecologist, and I said, okay, what are the odds that this virus was dormant and was in our bodies from years ago, and we're just so happens at the same time having an initial outbreak now, versus this being a recent exposure and it was passed on to me because I know I'm not cheating. I was faithful through the entire marriage. Well, if we're not including my vibrator. But anywho, my doctor basically said, well, there's no way to know for sure. That's the problem with this, is that we can't know for sure if this is something that you both contracted a long time ago, or one of you contracted a long time ago and gave to the other, and just so happened that both of you had an initial outbreak right now. But for both of you to have it at the same time, for it to start at the same time, is kind of suspicious. Okay. Well, I wanted to let it go, and there was a part of me that felt comforted with knowing that at least I'm married. I don't have to worry about dating with an STD and being judged or having to explain this to people and tell people, you know, what I have if I, you know, potentially have a new partner. We're in this together. Whatever it is. I've already been, you know, condemned for not giving him the benefit of the doubt. This was long after the condom and the garment bag incident. So I kind of felt comforted by that. Well, you know, we both have it, so no big deal. So at this point, I was in grad school. I was working on my master's in marriage and family therapy at Seton Hall University in New Jersey. And basically, the sexlessness in our marriage had escalated to a dull roar for me. It was something that I was really struggling with. It really impacted my self-esteem, my body image, and I went to my husband and I said, look, I really want to take inventory of what's going on because this isn't working for me. I'm in my 20s. I want to have sex with you. How about that? And you're always saying no, and it's come to a point where now it's like this big thing in the middle of our relationship, and I am almost done with grad school. I'm going to have a lot more free time. I want to go to couples therapy, and I want to figure this out. And he said, okay. So we go to one session with a couples therapist, and the couples therapist basically said, I want each one of you to make a list for homework of the things that you want to change in your marriage. And I want you to be specific. So it's not just like more sex. It's got to be more specific. Okay. So I go home and I do this homework that the therapist assigned, and I see that he's not doing it. And days go by and he still hasn't done it. And it's starting to kind of worry me. So I sit him down and I'm like, what's going on? Why are you having trouble with this homework? And he goes, well, I don't feel comfortable saying. And it dawned on me. And I asked him, is it because what you really want to change in our relationship is me, and you know you can't ask for that? I am who I am. You married me because you love who I am, supposedly. And if you were to ask me to do that, and if I did it, I won't be happy. But if I don't do it, you won't be happy. And he's like, no, that's not it. I'm like, okay. So the next day, he gives me a call and says, hey, I'm going to be home late. I'm going to go have dinner with my dad. I was like, okay, go for it. So he comes home from dinner with his dad, and he looks white as a ghost. And he comes through the door, and as soon as he comes through the door, he breaks down crying, and he's like, you were right in what you said. That's why I can't do my homework. I do want you to be somebody that you're not, and I realize it's not fair for me to ask that of you. And I just don't think that we got married for the right reasons. I think I married you for who I was hoping you would become, but not who you actually are. And that's not fair. And you deserve to be happy and to be with someone who loves you for who you are. And I deserve to be happy. And this isn't working for me. And I want a divorce. What? So I said, are you not going to go back to couples therapy with me? You're just throwing in the towel. We're not trying. We're not trying to figure out like what's going on. You're just done. And he's like, yeah, I'm done. Sorry, that's Agnes, my cat. She likes to be disruptive. So I was floored. I was devastated. I had a panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I was crying hysterically. I'm pretty sure I threw up. I didn't know what to do with that. And at the time, we were living in New Jersey and we were both talking about moving to San Francisco. So I wanted to move to San Francisco right before I met him. I wanted to go to grad school there. I don't know what it is about San Francisco. I was always drawn to it. It was just this weird pull that city had on me even before I ever visited it for the first time. And I was finishing up grad school, didn't have a job lined up. He was working, and he was not loving his job and he wanted a change of pace. So we decided to both look for jobs in San Francisco. And I'd given up on my dream of moving there when I met him because I was young and in love and I thought he was the love of my life and I need to make some sacrifices to see where this relationship goes. So I decided to go to grad school at the time in Florida. I started down there because that's where we met. And then in the recession in 2007, he worked in real estate. He lost his job and we ended up having to move. I had to transfer. I lost a lot of my credits, but I ended up finishing my master's in New Jersey at Seton Hall University. So anyway, we're talking about going to San Francisco. This was my dream. I love this city. So he tells me he wants a divorce. I'm crushed. The next day, he comes home and tells me, so one of the jobs I applied for in San Francisco actually has made me an offer. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to go without you. I need to start over. I will help you as much as I can to get back on your feet, but I need to do this. Okay. And he said, well, I'm leaving in like 2 or 3 weeks. So before I leave, I want to take a trip to Delaware. We were in New Jersey. Delaware is like 3 hours away, and that's where he went to college. So he says, I want to go to Delaware to visit all my old college friends because I don't know when I'm going to be back on the East Coast, so I'm going to go for the weekend. I said, okay, go. We were still living together. All of that was still the same. So he goes. I'm at home. I'm devastated. I feel like I was a bad wife, like he never loved me. I was taking him at his word when he said he didn't love me for who I am and married me for the wrong reasons. And while he's in Delaware, he calls me and says, hey, I got a call from work and there's something they need off of my work laptop, but I didn't bring it with me. It's at home. Will you go into it and get it for me and send it to me? I was like, okay. And I was the kind of wife who never checked his phone, never looked at his computer, didn't have any passwords, didn't want them, never asked him, how late is he going to be home, who he's out with, what he's doing. I just, I never felt the need to check. I never felt the need to police him. So I said, okay, well, I don't know how to get into your laptop. So you're kind of going to have to walk me through it and I'll find the document and I'll send it to you. Okay. So he walks me through it. I go into his work laptop. I send it to him. And this was the first and only time in our entire relationship that I somehow felt compelled to look at other stuff. And he had a thumb drive hanging out of his laptop. And I decided to see what's on there. So I open up the files on there. And this was basically his cache of all of his acting out, all of his infidelity throughout our entire marriage. And as you know, files have like the dates that they were created that you can find. And I looked at the dates and it dated back to 1 week after we got back from our honeymoon. Basically, our entire marriage. I found photos. I found drafts of, I'm guessing, what ended up being sent as an email, pictures of himself, nude pics that he received, receipts, confirmations of purchases and reservations, logins and passwords to dating websites, everything. And I started reading through it because I wanted to. I don't know. There was this moment of disconnection and I needed to see more. So he was writing letters to these women saying, basically, here are, attached our wedding photos. This was my beloved wife. She died of cancer. I'm so lonely. I just want to have somebody that I can love and spoil. And, I would love for that to be you. I'm a lonely guy. I really, I'm a widower, so on and so forth. So I started going through and I was like, oh, I died of cancer, did I? Okay. So I find the names of several women. I think there was like 14 total. I start looking through his emails because now I had access. I found emails to some of his closest friends where he was scared that some girl he hooked up with was pregnant. And I saw the emails back and forth between him and his friends, where his friend was like, oh man, that sucks. Go take her to get an abortion. And I decided I needed more confirmation than this. So I ended up reaching out to 2 of the women on Facebook. One of them responded to me right away. And I said, look, no animosity. I mean you no harm. I'm his wife. And I realize he lied to you. And I just need to know for myself if this is true, that you guys had an affair, that you had a pregnancy scare. And she was a little apprehensive at first. And she did say, I'm so sorry. He told me you'd passed away. And I was like, no, I get it. I know. No big deal. I'm not mad at you at all. And I said, well, did you guys have sex? And she wouldn't answer me directly. So I said, well, you should know, woman to woman, that he has herpes. And at this point, she freaked out. Gotcha, bitch. And she goes, oh my God, he does? I go, yes, he does. And you may want to go get tested if you had sex with him. And she goes, oh my God, thank you so much. I'm going to call my doctor right now. And that to me was all the confirmation I needed. So at this point, I still didn't confront him. I then got my own thumb drive and basically copied that thumb drive onto it and other stuff on his hard drive that I found. And then I called him and I told him what I found. I told him who I spoke to and what she said, and he denied it. And I said, look, I just need you to tell me, like, when did this start? I need you to just acknowledge that this happened. You've been exposed already. I found all of it. And he's like, no, it never happened. I never had sex with anyone. I never met up with anyone. I was like, so the reservations at this restaurant didn't happen. This flower purchase didn't happen. You didn't have an account on this dating website. You didn't have a pregnancy scare with so-and-so. You never told anybody that I was your beloved wife who died of cancer. He's like, no, I never did any of it. Right. So at this point, I have to say this was kind of a pivotal point for me because up until that very moment, I was blaming myself entirely for the demise of our marriage. I thought that I was just not available because I was working all the time and going to school full time in the evenings. I thought that maybe it was my fault because I'd neglected him, or I put on weight, or I just didn't have enough in common with him. I wasn't as syrupy sweet as his mother. I was more real and spoke my mind rather than just sugarcoating everything. And I really thought that it was me. And discovering this, yes, it was shocking and painful, and it was a betrayal. But at the same time, it allowed me to take some of the blame off of myself. That those suspicions that I had, those moments where he was gaslighting me, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me being paranoid and insecure and suspicious. There was something going on. I was right. My intuition was correct. It was affirmation that I'm not crazy. It's not just my own shit from my father's infidelity, that he actually was doing stuff behind my back, that I was right to feel the way I did. And then I got angry. You know, you've been rejecting me this whole time. You've destroyed my self-esteem, my body image, my sense of feeling secure in our relationship, in our marriage, of feeling desired and loved. And yet you don't give a shit. And this whole time you have been getting your dick wet with somebody else. Not only that, but had I not found this, had I not discovered this, and had I not seen any of this, you never would have told me that you were doing this. And you were prepared to leave this marriage knowing that I was so devastated and I was blaming myself so much. And you were so okay with watching me torture myself with all of this grief and remorse and regret. And you were going to let me live out the rest of my days thinking it was my fault entirely for ruining this marriage because you were too much of a coward to come clean and admit to what you were doing. Even if you were unhappy, even if you had whatever feelings, you never came and talked to me about it. And I'm sorry, but that makes you a coward. Come and talk to me. Tell me you're not happy. Tell me you want to go outside of our marriage. But he never did. So I got pissed. But that anger actually was great because up until then, I was just immobilized with grief. It's the only time in my life I can honestly say I felt suicidal. This was the lowest point of my entire life. And so we split up and he moved to San Francisco as he said he would. He wiped out our bank accounts and I had no place to live. I didn't have a job lined up. He did not help me out as he said he would. He went radio silent. And this is after telling me that he wanted to remain friends, that I was his best friend and he couldn't imagine losing me. All bullshit, for the record. And his parents, his syrupy sweet mother, they actually took money out of their retirement to pay for him to leave and move and basically run away. So I got the rug pulled out from under me. I had no place to live. I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. This was a very, very dark point in my life. It ended up working itself out, but that was my discovery. And after that, basically, we went into divorce proceedings. I got a lawyer. I sent them his hard drive and moved forward with a divorce. And he tried avoiding me for months on end, didn't actually want to engage in the process. I had to push him to finalize. And we got divorced and I went into therapy. I went to therapy for years and years and years. I knew that this was painful at the time, but I didn't realize until months and years later, after doing so much work on myself, just how deeply traumatic this was. This was probably the biggest trauma of my entire life. Was this betrayal trauma, was the gaslighting, was just the heartless, ruthless way that he made me blame myself and was willing to let me continue blaming myself and was willing to leave the relationship having me believe that it was just me who had a problem. So he's currently remarried and I believe his wife just had a set of twins and they also have a little girl. And I feel for her. I've been tempted to reach out to her to warn her of who she's married to, but I haven't. I haven't made any efforts to communicate with him or with her since we finalized our divorce. Basically, I've just cut that off and focused on rebuilding my own life. I did a lot of therapy. I think the trauma still comes up for me in different ways. I still get triggered here and there, but it's definitely nowhere near what it was years ago. And this is after, I would say, about 7 or 8 years of intensive therapy, thousands of dollars on therapy, all different kinds of treatments, modalities, and me really, really putting in a ton of effort to do the work of healing from this trauma. And the only reason why I didn't want to even try to work on this is because he denied everything. There was no accountability. There was no ownership of his behavior. And also, I wasn't given much of a choice. He did this, and then he was the one who left. So would I try to work on it and be supportive of him if he was willing to go into recovery? Honestly, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I think that there would have to be some major conversations, and I would need to see him taking a lot of accountability for what he did. But fast forward, this year in May, I got remarried to my current husband. His name is Ted. I say current like there's going to be others. Hopefully not. Ted is not a sex addict, thankfully. But navigating my relationship with Ted over the last however many years we've been together, it's been interesting because I do have to kind of really practice self-awareness about when my old wounds and traumas come into play versus, how our dynamics work. I have to remind myself that he's not the same person. He's not an addict. He is trustworthy. It's been a long journey to learn to trust again and to be open and communicative and to not be hypervigilant or paranoid or shut down. That happened for a long time. Dating was really, really tough after my divorce. I will say that. So that is my story. As you heard in my story, I did mention my dad's infidelity. So when I was, I'm trying to think, right before I got married. No, it was before that. It was before I got engaged the first time. My mom came to me and told me that my dad was having affairs. My sister at the time was about 6 or 7 years old. And my dad didn't know that I knew about this for several years. And when I got married for the first time, my parents had been going through a really messy, complicated, difficult divorce pretty much through my entire engagement, which was almost 2 years. And they finalized their divorce like 3 weeks before my wedding. So my wedding was pretty tense. My dad brought a date who is his now wife, who is pretty close to my age. He has struggled with issues of infidelity and communication. He's not a good communicator, but he's my dad and I love him. But I've definitely seen him grow and do work on himself in this process. I watched my mom go through this betrayal trauma. I know that she still has a lot of pain and hurt feelings around what happened, and she's moved on in her life. She has a new partner. But I do feel like infidelity, sex addiction, betrayal trauma, this kind of stuff is something that is pretty familiar to me because I've been through it in different contexts. So that is pretty much why I'm drawn to doing the work that I do around sex, sexuality, infidelity, sex addiction, betrayal trauma. That is my jam. And that is why it is my jam. So that's my story. Now you know a hell of a lot about me. I am happily married. And we do talk about this. My current husband knows everything that happened. I've been very open with him. And yeah. All right. It's out there. So if you have any questions, if there's any feedback, if there's anything you'd like to share on this, I, as always, am open to hearing it. And I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that more so than anything else, this provides you with hope for yourself that it is possible to heal from this and to get to the other side. And yes, it requires a lot of hard work. And yes, it is so fucking painful when you are in the thick of it. And I get that. And it totally is. Absolutely will validate that all day. But it's not hopeless, and it doesn't have to be this level of painful for the rest of your life. And there is hope and life and love after betrayal, I promise. So that is this episode. It was a lengthy one of undressing the issue. And we undressed, I guess, my issue in terms of my history with sex addiction, betrayal trauma, and why I do this work. Thank you for listening, and till next time.